Imagine the thermometer hitting 104 degrees Fahrenheit while you stand knee-deep in a rotting mixture of volcanic ash, mud, and decomposing bodies on the island of Peleliu. You are drinking warm, rust-flavored water out of an old diesel drum while tropical flies lay eggs in your unhealing ulcers. But even this rotting green hell is nothing compared to what awaits you in captivity. If you are unlucky enough to end up in the laboratories of the top-secret Japanese Unit 731, a man in a pristine white coat will tie you to a post in sub-zero temperatures. He will methodically douse your bare arms in freezing water, then strike them with a wooden stick until they ring like solid wood, just to determine the exact stage of frostbite before amputating them, without anesthesia. This is the Pacific theater of World War II. A place where the jungle digests you alive, and the enemy considers you nothing more than a log for biological experiments. This is a video about why you wouldn't survive 24 hours fighting the Japanese Empire. Forget the Hollywood movies, where heroic American Marines storm a sand-drenched beach under a hail of machine gun fire. The landing at Guadalcanal in August 1942 shatters that myth in the very first minutes. When your landing craft drops its ramp, you aren't met by a storm of bullets, but by an absolute, suffocating silence. The enemy has retreated deep into the island, and that is exactly where your personal, slow-motion hell begins. Welcome to the jungle. Your first problem isn't a Japanese sniper. Your first problem is a climate that is physically hostile to human survival. The temperature sits at 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity is nearly 100%. That means the sweat your body produces cannot evaporate. From the moment you step onto the sand, you will never be dry again. Your cotton uniform absorbs sweat, mud, and swamp water like a sponge. Within days, the fabric literally begins to rot and fall apart directly on your body. You don't take your boots off for weeks, because if you do, your swollen, blistered, fungus-ridden feet will simply never fit back inside the wet leather. But the jungle doesn't just make you sweat, it methodically digests you. Every tiny scratch here becomes a lethal threat. The islands are surrounded by coral reefs, and if you scraped your knee on coral during the landing, millions of microscopic bacteria instantly flooded the wound. In this environment, it doesn't scab over. It inflames, turns black, and expands into a festering tropical ulcer the size of a coin that slowly eats your flesh down to the bone. The soldiers simply called it jungle rot. You march through dense thickets of elephant grass, blades taller than a man, with edges sharp as razors that slice your face and arms with every step. The air is so heavy and stagnant that drawing a breath feels like swallowing a warm, wet towel. And everywhere there is the smell. It is not the fresh scent of a forest. It is the thick, sweet, nauseating stench of rotting vegetation, decomposing animals, and human waste. There is no sanitation here. You dig holes in the mud, which promptly overflow during the daily torrential downpours, washing raw sewage directly into the streams you are forced to drink from. You are not a hero bringing democracy to the Pacific theater. You are a piece of rotting meat trapped in a green meat grinder. And the most terrifying part is that you haven't even seen a single enemy soldier yet, and your body has already started to shut down. By your second week, you realize that bullets are the least of your concerns. Before you even see a single enemy soldier, the environment begins to systematically shut your organs down. Nature here kills far more efficiently than the Japanese Imperial Army. You are a walking incubator for dysentery, dengue fever, and malaria. When the malarial chills hit, your body shakes violently from perceived cold while you bake in a suffocating 104-degree heat. The medical corps' only solution is a daily dose of a synthetic anti-malarial drug called atabrine. The pills are notoriously bitter, but the side effects are what you'll remember. They literally turn your skin and the whites of your eyes a sickly, jaundiced yellow. In severe cases, they trigger intense paranoia and hallucinations. You swallow them anyway because the alternative is cerebral malaria and a fatal coma. Because of rampant dysentery, you cannot keep food down. You are rapidly losing weight, squatting over overflowing mud latrines in the pouring rain while flies cover your exposed skin. Long before you ever fire your rifle in anger, you are written off by your own commanders as a sanitary casualty. If the diseases don't break your mind, the psychological terror of the night certainly will. You are fighting an enemy that operates on a completely different calculus of human life. For the Imperial Japanese soldier, guided by a rigid interpretation of the Bushido Code, surrender is not a tactical decision. It is the ultimate disgrace, worse than death itself. There are no safe front lines here. As night falls, you sit in a flooded foxhole, staring into absolute pitch-black darkness, listening to the suffocating sounds of the jungle. Then, the silence is shattered. Piercing, blood-curdling screams of banzai erupt from the tree line. This isn't a conventional tactical assault. It is a mass suicide charge designed to terrify you and take as many Americans down as possible. Soldiers charge directly into your machine gun fire with bayonets and samurai swords, sometimes clutching live grenades to their own chests just to blow up your position. Every inch of coral and mud is fought for until the absolute last man is dead. They will not retreat, and they will not surrender, turning every skirmish into an apocalyptic meat grinder where the traditional rules of warfare simply do not exist. By the time you reach the black volcanic ash of Iwo Jima or the muddy, rain-soaked ridges of Okinawa, the rules of engagement change completely. The enemy is no longer charging at you in the open. They are dug deep into the earth, surviving in elaborate, interconnected cave systems and reinforced concrete bunkers that heavy artillery shells barely scratch. To clear them out, you are handed one of the most terrifying weapons ever produced by human engineering, the M2 flamethrower. Strapping 70 pounds of highly flammable, pressurized jellied gasoline to your back instantly makes you the primary target for every Japanese sniper on the battlefield. Your life expectancy drops to minutes, but you have a job to do. You crawl up to the mouth of a dark, fortified cave, brace yourself, and squeeze the trigger. We need to talk about the horrific physics of what happens next. You aren't just burning the enemy to death. When a burst of napalm explodes into a sealed underground bunker, the sudden, massive ignition instantly consumes all the oxygen in the confined space. The resulting vacuum creates a catastrophic pressure drop that physically ruptures the lungs of anyone hiding too deep for the actual flames to reach. They suffocate in the absolute dark, bleeding from their ears and mouths. The ones closer to the entrance simply melt. There is no dignity in this kind of warfare, and the sweet, sickening smell of roasted human meat mixed with burning hair and diesel fuel will embed itself so deeply into your uniform and your memory that you will never, ever be able to wash it out. But the flamethrowers, the mud, and the banzai charges are not the worst things waiting for you in the Pacific. The absolute worst-case scenario is being taken alive. If you surrender, or if you are captured unconscious, your rights under the Geneva Convention do not exist. If you are extremely unlucky, you will be secretly shipped to Manchuria, to a sprawling, heavily guarded facility in Pingfang known only as Unit 731. Run by Surgeon General Shiro Ishii, this facility does not treat prisoners of war. It processes them. The moment you arrive, you are stripped of your name, your rank, and your humanity. The guards and researchers officially refer to you as Maruta, which translates literally to a log of wood. You are no longer a person. You are raw, disposable material for medical and biological weapons research. Here, you will experience bureaucratized sadism executed with cold, scientific detachment. If the Imperial Army wants to understand how to treat frostbite for their own troops, a man in a pristine white coat will tie you to a post outside in sub-zero winter temperatures. He will pour freezing water over your bare arms and strike them with a short wooden stick until they ring like solid ice. Then, they will drag you inside and plunge your frozen limbs into boiling water just to observe the rapid tissue necrosis. If they are developing biological weapons, you will be locked in a small glass cell and deliberately infected with bubonic plague via weaponized fleas, or tied to a stake while shrapnel laced with gangrene is detonated next to you. But the true, unspeakable horror of Unit 731 is the vivisection. To understand how diseases destroy human organs in real time, or how much pressure a human body can take before the eyes pop out of the skull, the doctors will strap you to a surgical table and cut you open while you are entirely wide awake. They use absolutely no anesthesia, believing that medication might skew the medical data or alter the state of your organs. They will methodically remove your stomach, your liver, or your lungs, watching you scream and bleed out under the bright surgical lights while taking meticulous handwritten notes. In Unit 731, there are no survivors. You don't just die, you are dismantled. If you somehow avoid the dysentery, survive the midnight banzai charges, escape the suffocating heat of the flamethrowers, and stay out of the surgical theaters of Unit 731, you still have to face the ultimate, crushing reality of the Pacific War. You are completely disposable. In this theater of operations, the basic calculus of human value has been entirely erased. You are fighting an enemy so committed to absolute destruction that they literally bolt their own pilots into the cockpits of explosive-laden aircraft. When you stand on the deck of a ship and watch a kamikaze pilot deliberately fly his plane into a wall of anti-aircraft fire, vaporizing himself just to burn you alive, the last remaining pieces of your civilian mind permanently break. The sheer, unrelenting brutality of this environment strips away every layer of civilization you brought with you from home. You are no longer a person. You are simply what the military quietly refers to as wastage, a temporary biological component thrown into a meat grinder of coral, mud, and fire. Survival here doesn't mean winning. It just means you haven't died yet. You might survive your first 24 hours on the islands. You might even survive the months of rotting in the trenches that follow. If you are incredibly lucky, you might eventually get on a transport ship and watch those suffocating green islands disappear over the horizon. But that is the final, cruelest illusion of the Pacific War. History books will tell you that this conflict ended in September 1945. But for the men who actually walked out of that biological nightmare, the war never truly stopped. Because the brutal truth of fighting the Japanese Empire is this: you may eventually leave the jungle, but the jungle will never, ever leave you.